Welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking a closer look at something a little weird, right? It's a bullpup, a Keltec RDB to be more exact. I do not own this weapon. It's loaned to me, so I have nothing invested in it other than some ammo. I have no bias towards this weapon, so I will give you as honest of a review as I can about the rifle and the rifle only. So I feel like a lot of people know what bullpups are, right? But they don't really know what they are, or maybe better yet, they don't really know how they function and what makes them different than the traditional rifle. So if you are new to the concept, the term bullpup refers to the firearm configuration where the action, meaning where the bullet's fired and ejected, actually takes place behind the trigger group, as well as the magazine. The magazine is located behind the trigger group. This is all near the shooter's shoulder. This design is fundamentally different from the traditional rifle, where all that jazz is in front of the trigger. This design does come with its own set of advantages, but it also comes with its own set of disadvantages. The concept of the bullpup design actually is not like as new, I think, as most people would think. It's not as modern. From what I've read, because I did do a little bit of research prior to this, the beginning of it is kind of a little foggy. Some people say early 1900s, some people say mid 1800s, but from what I've read, the bullpup was designed around 1901 by a French engineer named Henry. He has a last name, but I can't really pronounce it. I don't know. It's weird. It's French, so it's a weak last name anyways. Doesn't really matter. It's going to be lost in time, like most of the French. This design never really gained traction until like the mid 20th century, because the French were too busy losing wars and stuff like that. However, the British EM2 was developed in like the 1940s. Now, the EM2 for the time was a revolutionary design, okay? It integrates the bullpup configuration to create a more compact and efficient rifle. However, it was never adopted into widespread service due to political and logistical reasons, most likely because the original design was French. Fast forward to the 1970s, the AUG from Australia became the first successfully and somewhat widely adopted bullpup rifle. I think this is what most people think of when they hear a bullpup. Seems to be the most popular example of a bullpup, and the AUG, it set the standard for modern bullpups, you know, combining reliability, modularity, and kind of a cool but questionable design. All right, history class is over, so let's get back to the Keltec RDB. As far as civilian bullpups go, this is a pretty popular rifle for the civilian market. My guess is due to its affordability. You could pick one of these things up for under $1,000. Unlike the AUG and the X95, or I think the FN has the FS2000, which you never hear about, probably because most people think it's a Honda S2000, which those rifles are double, even triple the cost. So, why does the bullpup exist? That's a good question. By having all this action behind the trigger, you can have a standard length barrel. You can have a 16-inch barrel, but with the overall length of an SBR, such as like a 10.3 length out of a Mark 18. These two rifles, even with the stock fully collapsed, are essentially the same length, which is great. This is going to be much more accurate than this. So you're going to get the accuracy of a standard rifle, which is going to be much less maneuverable. As we all know, with 5.56, velocity is extremely important. Velocity is what does all the killing with 5.56. So when you have a shorter barrel, you are losing some of that ballistics, you're losing some of that velocity. You can be more accurate, more deadly with about the same amount of maneuverability as an SBR. And you don't have to have a tack stamp for this, even though it's the same length as an SBR. Now, don't be fooled, this does come with its own set of challenges, like a potentially less intuitive reload process due to the magazine placement. The magazine being in the rear can also cause some stabilization issues, you know. It can make it a little bit more difficult to prone fire this weapon unless you have a bag, which is not usually the case for a typical AR-15 platform. So you're most likely gonna have to kind of relearn some of your movements to compensate for the different design. Also the trigger group itself is really, it's kind of shit. It's really not great, all right? It's heavy and it's sloppy, and that's because of the linkage. There's more parts that the trigger group has to interact with than the traditional AR-15 because of it being in front of the action. Not to mention, you are losing quite a bit of real estate with this weapon. This one has an aftermarket rail, so it is not as bad, but the factory rail that comes with the Keltec RDB is probably the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. It's bad. It's bad. Having a PEC 15 or something on here is probably going to be a problem, most likely. You'll just have to kind of reconfigure it to find a way that works for you. You're going to run into a few challenges with this rail system, even with the M-LOK rail, but it's definitely better than the factory one. Charging handle's non-reciprocating, which is definitely a plus. You're not going to bust your knuckles on this. To charge it, you're going to pull it back, slides up in here, then you can do a little H and K action, just like an MP5 or an ump. Honestly though, I often found myself really messing my fingers up trying to charge this with an optic on it. Ow! At least with the UE. Maybe something with a riser would do good for this. I also have bitch hands, so problem for me, maybe it's not a problem for you. So what are the pros and what are the cons of the Keltec RDB? Superior balance and maneuverability due to design. Honestly, this is not an uncomfortable weapon to carry around. Like I said, it gets a little bit uncomfortable when you're trying to shoot from cover or you're trying to stabilize it on cover, but it shoots good. It really does shoot good. The recoil is very manageable. All of the weight being towards your shoulder means that most of that weight is going to be where your dominant hand is, which means it's going to be easier to carry around. And reloading really isn't that bad. You can pull it up in here, reload fast. Most people that usually use this rifle quite a bit can still do pretty efficient reloads. This weapon downward ejects, so all of the brass is going to go down. It does have an adjustable gas system, so you can do a little bit more versatile shooting. Not sure how this thing would do with a suppressor. I've not heard great things about bullpups and suppressors, but it's pretty light. It's pretty light and it's easy to handle. And I think that's very important when it comes to choosing a weapon. Cons, very limited aftermarket support compared to other established bullpups. Bullpups in general, there's just not a lot of aftermarket for them. They're not the most popular rifle. The trigger pull needs to be worked with for sure. This trigger pull is atrocious. That's my biggest thing, is the trigger on this. You have a heavy trigger, it's going to be easier to let the anticipation get you, and that means you're going to be less accurate. It definitely needs an initial break-in period. Most guns do, but this one really needs an initial break-in period. You're going to have a lot of malfunctions with it right off the bat, but that's not the end of the world. You just got to get out there and shoot it. In conclusion, if you want to just have a bullpup, like if you just have to buy it, yeah, I'd go with the Keltec RDB. I would definitely go with that over the other options, just so that you don't spend all your money. I don't think these rifles are realistic to use over the AR-15, especially when considering field stripping and malfunction clearing. I do get why these exist, okay? The concept makes sense. It just has never really been executed very well. You know, even people have a lot of problems with the X95. Not as much, but they do. And that's a very well-established rifle. But if you are kind of looking for your first kit stick, absolutely go with an AR-15. For the price of this, you can get a really nice AR. I know people are sick of ARs, but ARs are proven, they work, they're very good guns to start with. This is just not what I would jump into with if you're looking for your first rifle. If you're looking for something different, yeah, sure, absolutely. Absolutely go with this. It's cool. It's a cool addition to your collection. It's different from the norm. But like I said, if you're looking for your first kit stick, definitely not this. So I appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching the video. Please make sure to like and subscribe. I have a lot more reviews coming, a lot of really cool guns. Gonna get some good range time, and it helps the channel grow, which means I can give you more reviews on some even more cooler guns.